head coach of the Hurricanes, is with us, Jim Larrañaga. We're going to ask him to make a statement about his team being here in Tulsa, and then we'll go to questions. Jim, please.
Well, we're very excited to be here in Tulsa and competing in the NCAA tournament against the Michigan State Spartans. We have the utmost respect for Tom Izzo, his staff, and their program. Tom and I have had a very good relationship since my days at Bowling Green, and my team is looking forward to competing against them.
Questions? Right here, second row.
Jim, can you kind of expand on that relationship with Tom a little bit? I mean, obviously Stan Heath came from your program to his program, and just how much you knew him coming up through the ranks as an assistant coach.
I took the head coaching job at Bowling Green State University in 1986, and Tom was an assistant at Michigan State at the time. And my first encounter with them was when we identified a player named Steve Smith, who was out of Detroit, and my staff and I watched him play, and we started recruiting him very, very hard. And we went to Steve's home in September of that senior year of his. And at that point in time, we offered Steve a scholarship, and he told me he was going to visit, that he was very seriously considering Bowling Green unless. I said, what do you mean, Steve, unless what? He said, unless Michigan State offers me a scholarship because they're my favorite. Magic Johnson's my hero, and if they offer me, that's where I'm going. And I don't know if Tom would repeat the story like that, because I think he saw Steve play that next weekend, and Steve had like 47 points, and he went to Steve's home by himself without Coach Heathcote, offered him a scholarship, and I believe, if I heard the story correctly, Steve Smith committed to him on the spot. But that was our first encounter. And then our teams played. My Bowling Green team played against Michigan State several times. And then when Tom was named the head coach, I just was so impressed with the job he did immediately. He just took them to a whole nother level. And then for those of you who don't know, Stan Heath was my assistant coach at the time. Tom hired him back in I believe that was 94 or 95. And then 5 years later, they won the national championship together, and that got Stan's head coaching career started. He jumped from Michigan State to Kent State. So known Tom an awfully long time and have the utmost respect for him.
Jim, I think most people know that 2006 run that you had started with the win against Michigan State. I'm wondering if that ever comes up very often when you talk to Tom, if that's something you like to remind him about here and there. Well,
Tom and I have never discussed it, but the media tends to bring it up a lot. So, but that's in the past. It has nothing to do with tomorrow night's game. It's Michigan State against the University of Miami, and both of us, I think, recognize we have young clubs. We have a lot of young guys making major contributions, and I'm sure we're both hopeful that those young guys will play up to their capability.
Chris Solari, Detroit Free Press. Dim, you talked about the 5-second layup that Michigan State likes to get out and push the ball. How do you defend that with your guards? Is it simply getting back in transition, or is it something that you have to do in the front court right away?
Well, first of all, you have to recognize that Michigan State is a highly disciplined, highly organized machine. Before our season ever began and we started talking about the importance of getting back defensively against any opponent, we use as an example that the University of North Carolina and Michigan State are the two best college basketball programs in the country at scoring within the first 5 seconds of their possession, whether you score on them or not. So if they rebound it, they can score on you within 5 seconds. If you score on them, they can still score on you. And my coaching staff wants me to refer to it now as the 3-second layup because they're scoring that fast. And with a point guard like Tum Tum, he can get out and push the ball and get them either a layup or an open three that quickly. So you have to practice that, not for Michigan State, but for every opponent. But you have to be at your best if you're facing North Carolina or Michigan State, because they are the two best programs at it.
Jim, obviously you guys both have a lot of youth, but you have a couple veteran guys that you can kind of lean on a little bit. Michigan State hasn't had that much this year. How much of a benefit has it been when you are trying to bring along those young guys that you have a couple veterans at least to kind of lead them through?
Excuse me. I think it's the reason we're here. Davon Reed and Kamari Murphy are two of the best leaders I've ever had, and they've done it by example, by how hard they practice every day, the consistency of their effort and execution. They're both tremendous defensive players. Davon Reed was voted to the all-defensive team in the ACC, and I believe Kamari Murphy should have been the defensive player of the year. That's how good I think he is defensively. He didn't even make the all-defensive team. But in my estimation, we wouldn't be where we are, and our young players would not have developed the way they have if it weren't for those two guys and the message they sent from day one about the importance of defending and rebounding.
Right here in the center.
Janine Edwards, ESPN. Hi, Coach. Great to see you again. You just mentioned some of the nuances between Carolina and Michigan State. What are some of the other nuances that playing in the ACC will help you with in preparation for tomorrow night's game?
Well, what we like to do is make comparisons so that our players have more of a familiarity with the opponent. So, for example, when we showed him videotape of Lou Rawls Nairn Jr. and told him that his nickname is Tum Tum, we showed him videotape of him and then compared him to John Gillen of Syracuse, because the first time we played Syracuse, John torched us with his speed and quickness and ability to score in the open court. And then we talked about Miles Bridges and the great player he is, and compared him to Jason Tatum of Duke, of how well he can score from three-point range, but what a great athlete he is, and can score in a variety of ways. And then we compared Nick Ward to a Kennedy Meeks, who Kennedy Meeks in the ACC is one of the premier low-post players, a tremendous offensive rebounder, a tremendous jump hook shooter. Kennedy's right-handed, Nick Ward is left-handed, but there's a lot of similarities.
Jim, you guys have some size on your roster, and Michigan State right now doesn't due to the injuries and some of that. Is that a situation where you can exploit it with the guys that you typically use in your rotation, or do you feel like you can go a little deeper maybe with your big guys in this game?
That's an interesting question. We're at our best when we get multiple guys playing very well, not just our three upperclassmen, Jaquan Newton, Davon Reed, and Kamari Murphy. Those guys have been consistent, scoring the ball pretty regularly. But we're at our best when we get a major contribution from an Anthony Lawrence, a Bruce Brown, DeJuan Ewell, a Buka Zundu. Guys like that, when they're scoring double figures or having a big rebound game, that really speaks volumes for how well we can play.
On the left-hand side, thank you.
Coach, you mentioned player comparisons and brought up Tum Tum Nairn. There's also freshman point guard Cassius Winston. I was wondering if he stood out to you and if you had a player comparison for him.
Yeah, Cassius Winston to us is a very high-Q basketball player. Really knows how to play, knows how to pass, knows how to get a shot for himself, but he's most dangerous at finding an opponent and getting the other guys going. And quite honestly, there are not a lot of players in the country that play at that high level of basketball IQ. So we had a hard time finding a good comparison at the college level. So we used an old NBA player, now retired, named Steve Nash, and said how important it is when Steve Nash played, for you to be ready, because he could find the open man with brilliance. And we find Cassius Winston to be that kind of point guard.
Back row, Jim.
Yeah, Coach, you talked about youth a lot already, but have you encountered a team so far this year or in your career that has so many young guys playing so many minutes like MSU does? And what challenges, if any, does a team with so much youth and inexperience provide in tournament time?
It's interesting you would ask that, because one of the teams in our league that was picked preseason number 1 is now a number 2 seed. They rely very heavily on freshmen, guys like Frank Jackson and Jason Tatum and those Duke Blue Devils. So we know that youth and the inexperience plays a role very early in the season, and it takes a while for the young guys to kind of get their feet on the ground and know what they should be doing and what they should avoid doing. But by this time of the year, those freshmen are at least sophomores and have played at a very, very high level for a long time. So I don't think there's an advantage on either side of the rosters.
Anything else for the head coach of Miami? Yes, second row.
Coach, what surprised or impressed you most about Bruce Brown's ability to get 25 and 30 points against Duke and Carolina?
Well, when we recruited Bruce, the reason we loved him so much is how hard he plays. He just competes every single game. We watched him in AAU ball. And he's done that throughout this season. From his very first day at an official practice, he went really hard. And he shows that competitive spirit at such a high level that there is no ceiling for him. You know, he can just keep getting better and better. And in games, big games like tomorrow night, you know, I don't know what he's going to do, but I know he's going to play really, really hard. He might score a bunch of points, or he might get a bunch of assists or a bunch of rebounds, a bunch of blocked shots or steals. He just plays really hard at the game. And against Duke and Carolina, his shot was falling for him, so he kept shooting. His teammates found like he had the hot hand, so they kept giving him the ball. And he's had the unique responsibility of playing the 1, 2, and 3 throughout a game, not just the season, but in every game. He doesn't start at the 1, but we move him to the 1. He starts at the 3 and then moves to the 2, then to the 1, then back to the 3. And his matchups change constantly. So from a defensive standpoint, he just likes the challenge of whoever I have to guard, I'm going to try to do the best I can.
Final question for this segment right here.
Jim, I think I blanked out on that one. Let me think about this for a half second again. I totally blanked out. Yeah, I'm good.
You got nothing? All right. That's the way I do. That's what I do at timeout sometimes. Timeout. Coach, what are we running?
You're going to laugh when you figure out what I wanted to ask. What I wanted to ask you about was Miles Bridges. You know, a guy that you really can't forget. When you look at a guy like that, how difficult is it to defend him? And do you have a good enough base with what you saw in the ACC to really defend him at an optimal level?
Well, Miles Bridges is an incredible athlete. And one of the things about Michigan State as a team is they run so well. And Miles Bridges is such a great athlete, he is very, very hard to guard in the open court, whether he's out in front and trying to dunk on you, or he's trailing the break and shooting a 3. Or you close out to take away the 3, and he drives it and takes it right to the rim. When a player is so multidimensional, you've got to figure out not how to stop him, but how to at least slow him down. Try to limit the number of opportunities he gets to make threes. Limit the number of times he beats you off the dribble. Limit the number of times he crashes the offensive boards and tip dunks on you. So we're going to have to do a great job both individually and collectively. There's not just one guy that can stop him.
Thank you, Coach. Best of luck.
Thank you.